Thank you so much for such an insightful and eye-opening speech. Thank you to all our speakers and to Tammy for that wonderful introduction. And next up, I'm going to be introducing briefly all our panelists, for those who are not familiar with the lineup yet. And I would start off with Ms. Fumi. Ms. Fumi Eniolorunda, she's CEO of Venture Garden Group. We also have Ms. Ophelia Temi Ibikwe. She's the founder of Phyllion Partners. We have with us Mr. Tomiwa, CEO Big Harbor Media. Mr. Ayeni Adekunle, Mr. Ayeni the Great, is the CEO of Black House Media Group. We also have Mr. Emmanuel Asika, is the channel head HP Central Africa. And here we have Ms. Tosin Fani Rodada. She's the head startups Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. And we have Mr. Shegun, who is the Global Service Delivery Manager, Hewlett Packard, operated by Selectum. Now, I'm going to start off. First off, it's such an honor to host all these amazing thought leaders. And I'm sure you can tell from my face that I'm really excited. And I can't wait to see the conversations that we're going to have today. And I'm sure our listeners out there will also learn one or two things after this. But to kickstart this, because we're keeping to time, I'd like to invite Ms. Fumi to briefly introduce yourself and just tell us how your business has been embracing technology, especially of late.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the host. Thank you very much for having me. I am super excited to be here. Thank you very much. My name is Funmilola Eniolorunda. I'm the Chief Operations Officer at Venture Garden Group. Venture Garden Group is a group of financial technology solutions company, and we have businesses across different industry verticals. So we have, data and revenue assurance businesses in the education, in the aviation, in the financials, in the power sector, different industry verticals. And this period has been a very exciting period for us. We have a motto, which I believe ties directly to what we're talking about today, which is transforming Africa using technology. So that's pretty much what we do at Venture Garden Group. And it's exciting that, all of the work that we've done pretty much has prepared many of our clients and partners for a time such as this. For our business specifically, it wasn't so difficult for us to transition, into remote work because, again, we've embraced technology for a really long, period of time as a business. So when the whole pandemic started, it was a day's decision to move all our staff remotely. And, we were actually able to, in fact, at the point we felt that productivity actually went 2x for us because, again, everybody was kind of like already prepared for that. For Africa generally, I believe that Africa has obviously come a very, very long way in embracing technology. I really love all the things that Andrew spoke about. I thought they were really brilliant, seeing all of those great startups and all of the great things that they're doing, and even for the much bigger businesses. But I also still believe that there's a lot for us to do, right? For the governments, especially in Nigeria, in Africa, to embrace technology, get most of our processes automated, even for collection of data, like every single person in Nigeria, we should be able to identify them. And I believe that that's even like a really, really big area that the governments in Africa, really need to embrace. The other very critical thing that I think about a lot is how we're preparing our young people to also begin to embrace technology, right from now. What are they being taught in school? How are the young people? There are over like 95 million out of school children in Africa today. And I know that even the COVID pandemic has obviously increased the number of people that in the last 3 months have not even interacted with any educational material. So there are a lot of opportunities in that space as well for Africa to begin to look into and embrace technology further. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Fumi, for that. Moving on to Tammy, can you give us a brief introduction and your take on today's topic?
Okay. Hello, everyone. Once again, my name is Ayeni Ibekwe, founder of Phyllion Partners. If I'm sure if you don't already know that, or if you didn't hear that earlier. I will be speaking from the public relations and communications perspective. And one of the reasons why we at Phyllion decided to champion this conversation today, bringing key stakeholders in the tech and the comms sector to discuss, our own technology, because the way we see it is, we think that for so long, it looks like we're just, we haven't taken proactive steps in designing what works for, our people. Because, so for instance, the way we work in communication and marketing, we try to understand personas. Who are the people we're trying to speak to? What are their likes? What are they like, their demographics? And then we work backwards, based on the knowledge that we have of them. We then begin to design maybe communication campaigns here and there to work with them. And that's what we think that we need to bring to bear in technology. And even as communications professionals, we're at a time now where we're no longer waiting for the communications professional of today, or the one who will rule tomorrow, is the one who is trying to engage with the future. So I have a concept here that I've titled a future-based thinking. And that's why I think that this is my charge to all technology enthusiasts as well as communications enthusiasts. We need to begin to try and understand, Africa, or starting with home, Nigeria. What are the peculiarities within our environment? What is Adrian mentioned, the data connectivity and maybe lack of funding for some of the things or projects that we need to run. We now need to use that particular knowledge to begin to innovate or create ideas and solutions that can help Africa within the next couple of months, couple of years, and all of that. I think it's a concept as well in technology that is called human design thinking as well, whereby the human-centered design, where the human is at the center of it all. And then as communications or technology professionals, we are constantly innovating around the consumer. We've seen quite a number of that locally. From the OPAs to some of the innovations, local innovations that we've seen. But what we are seeing here today, and as an organization, is we're saying we need to begin to take proactive steps towards the future. So, and that's one of the reasons why, this conference is happening. And I believe that we're going to hear such conversations. What are the things that we need to put into consideration now for innovation of tomorrow? I believe that future-based thinking is a bedrock of us actively engaging with our own future in terms of technology. And for public relations as well, for communications, technology enthusiasts or technology practitioners need to begin to see PR as a vehicle. So you have this, sometimes you're in the future, you're already thinking of solutions, but people do not, the humans that you're trying to interact with do not yet know that they have a need for this. Now, what communication does is that it educates them, it brings them to the point where you're at, and then it helps them to see the usefulness of the benefits in some of this innovation that you'll be bringing to the table. So that's my take, future-based thinking, this human-centered design thinking.
Thank you so much, Tammy, and that's a good one. Next up is Tosi. So kindly give us a brief introduction and your take on the topic today.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. First, I want to apologize for my background. For some reason, there's crazy traffic on the mainland today, and I don't know why, and everything's in the office. But anyway, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Tammy, and hello to all the panelists and all the guests that have joined us today. Like Tammy said, my name is Tosin Fanirodada, and I work for the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. I look after our technology and innovation program called Lagos Innovates. And how I think I want to start this is to pretty much tell you why LSETF was created to start with. So LSETF is a government agency, and our mandate is very clear. It's very simple. It's to create jobs. Currently, Lagos has an unemployment and underemployment rate of over 20%. Now, in think about, creating the jobs that we need, the jobs for today, the jobs for the future, obviously we have to think about technology. And at the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, is something that we quickly recognize. How do we use technology to help us create the exponential number of jobs that were? And in terms of how we even started creating our programs and we have a loan program for entrepreneurs. We have an employability program where we train people and place them in jobs. And then we have an innovation program called Us Innovates. Now, when we started thinking about the Us Innovates program, we quickly recognized that technology can help us create that exponential number of jobs. I'm going to talk about the companies that are already doing it, because the keynote speaker that just finished talked about like InterSwitch, he talked about Paga, he talked about Uber, and so many other companies. Those platforms are creating a huge number of jobs for people in Lagos and other parts in Nigeria. So when we're thinking about Lagos Innovates, we thought, how do we support entrepreneurs? How do we support tech founders? How do we provide that enabling environment for them to thrive? Because we recognize that, technology can help us improve lives. It can drive economic growth, and then it can help with job creation as well. So one of the first things we did was to do like a survey of the ecosystem and speak to founders, people who run accelerators, employees of startups, people who run incubators, and people who own co-working spaces as well, just to find out what the pain points and the challenges were in the ecosystem at the time. And after our survey, there were about 4 main pain points that we came up with, or that we deduced from the survey, which were infrastructure. And the keynote speaker also mentioned that as well, electricity, broadband internet being expensive, and then talent. Talent was one of them, mentorship and capital. So what we then did was to design programs that address these pain points, ensure that founders have access to these programs. So for the infrastructure challenge, we have a workspace voucher program and a hub loan program. The workspace voucher program and the hub loan programs help with the demand and supply for co-working spaces. So yes, we know that we can't provide electricity to everyone in Lagos, to all the founders in Lagos, or internet. But if we give them access to places where they can get these services, so like co-working spaces, for example, that already come with electricity and internet, and also just working in a community, if we take that cost off of them and have them go and use those places at a discount or maybe even for free, then they have access to this infrastructure that they did not have before. So that's one. On the hub loan side, yes, we're sending all this demand to the co-working spaces, but who is helping them expand and open new locations? So if you think about like the co-working space business, for example, accessing a traditional loan, it would be almost impossible based on their books. I don't know if you've ever seen the financials of a co-working space. So they also do need help in terms of access to financing to help them expand and open new locations. So they can access up to 50 million naira from the fund at a single digit interest rate if they're already existing co-working spaces who want to expand or open new locations. And very quickly, back to the workspace voucher program, founders can access vouchers from 3 months to 12 months that helps them, deal with the infrastructure payments, and they don't have to worry about it, and LSCTF will take care of it. And then on the talent side, we have programs that pay for trainings for people who are interested in tech skills, for example, and cannot afford it. And the idea is that we improve their chances of placing them in jobs, so that once they do get placed, then they can then start to repay their loans. And then for the mentorship program, we have an incubation program that's going to be starting next month called the Lagos Innovates Idea Hub program, that would pretty much take businesses in ideation, take them through a structured mentorship process and help them get to MVP, and also connect them to the resources that they need. And then lastly, with capital, we don't invest in startups directly, but what we do is to matchmake them with investors, accelerators, or anyone that can help them scale. So because we're a government, we have access to private sector people, international agencies, media, whatever it is. So it's always easier for us to, do intro emails and just connect them to the sources that they need. And we always enjoy doing that for startups. So in wrapping up, I would just say that at LSETF, we know what technology can do for not just our ecosystem, not just our market, for Nigeria and for Africa. And I'll highlight again, job creation, which is our mandate, which makes my life easier. Economic growth, improving equality, obviously, and just improving the lives of people. And I'll quickly go back to the loan program. And yes, we do give loans to micro businesses and small businesses, small and medium businesses as well. But I think another thing that's also very important is just even helping them see what technology can do for them. So a lot of these micro and small businesses, we also train them on digital marketing, for example, just so they understand that, look, like while you have your mom and pop shop, this is what technology, can do for you if you embrace it. And then with our employability program as well, we do train people in tech skills and place them in jobs beyond the Lagos Innovates program. So in a nutshell, that's what LSETF is doing in terms of embracing technology to help us achieve our mandate and, to help us bridge the unemployment and underemployment gap in Lagos State. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tosin. Next up on our panel session is Tomiwa. So kindly introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tomiwa Adekunle. I'm the CEO of Big Cabal Media, which is the parent company for Tech Cabal and Zikoko. Zikoko, the youth publication, which you may or may not know. We cover sort of what is important to youth and youth culture in Nigeria primarily and West Africa. Tech Cabal is probably a little bit more pertinent to the conversation today because we cover technology across the continent. And so we cover both the business of technology and the impact of technology on people across the continent. So we have a pretty good eye on what it is that's happening, how this transformation is taking place, who the key players are, and what's important to them. About a month ago, we did a conference called Bullish on Africa, where we brought together sort of speakers from across the continent to talk about some of this. So I'll pull out some key points from that conversation and from sort of our general thinking. There are a few key spaces where we see a lot of action and that really matter. I think education is a really important one. Self-learning has become a lot more possible due to the internet. It's a fast accelerating thing and it's sort of more important in this moment that we're in now. So if you have children who can't go to school, the question is what it is that they're going to be doing. If you have universities that are out of session because students can't physically be in school, self-learning becomes a lot more important. And that's being aided by everything from platforms like ULesson, which launched earlier this year, just before the pandemic. And this is their moment for people who have kids at home and are trying to make sure that they're fully occupied, especially since the Nigerian sort of government hasn't really been fully embracive of online education. So what's critical there is, can people learn by themselves? And in addition to platforms like ULesson, there's also a lot of sort of self-training that's happening on platforms like Udemy or any of the various sort of code camps online or learning systems that are global, but we have access to here in Nigeria and across the continent. Now, what's important about these platforms is that the opportunities that they kind of create for people, particularly if you look at people of university age or above, it's the opportunity to sort of build expertise in something that pays better than what you might be able to find locally, the opportunity to work remotely for global employers. And as a transformation moment, this moment's really interesting and really important because as companies globally go remote, there's the opportunity for us in Africa to fight for those jobs. Because if you're going to have a remote employee team anyway, then the question is, even if you're in Silicon Valley, does that team need to be in California or can they be in Africa, as long as they have the context? And things like this are what companies like Andela have been working towards for a long time. But what's important is for individuals, they're now able to sort of partake in that economy by themselves anyway, without actually requiring an intermediary like Andela. And so there's a great opportunity for us through education to sort of accelerate the kind of jobs and the kind of FX revenues that people are able to have. And we're seeing this play out a lot. I mean, if you're an employee, if you're an employer, you know that you are, and you have high skilled workers like we do, you know that in a sense you're competing with a global market for this talent, because there are opportunities for them to freelance and earn more money and to do better for themselves on a global basis. There's a big transformation that's happened in the sort of tech and financial services play. We all see that. I think sort of Adrian Clues talked a little bit about that in his keynote speech. And we see that continue to evolve and continue to grow. What's important about this particular transformation in that sort of financial services space is that it's a big enabler of the rest of the economy. So the changes and the improvements in our ability to pay or to receive payments from across the world, in our ability to transact safely, quickly, and efficiently, have a knock-on effect on the rest of the economy across the continent. I think the next big shift that's critical is making those payment systems interoperable across countries. And that's important because of things like the AFCFTA, which opens the opportunity to sort of trade across countries, across the continent. And so the question is, if you're selling services, and it will more likely be services rather than goods, how do you sort of payment from somebody in Uganda? And so the interoperability of payment systems across the continent, I think, is one of the big sort of transformative things that's going to happen. Zikoko did a project called Jollof Road last year, and we had to make payments all across West Africa. EcoBank had a bunch of tools that were useful for us over the course of that project. And it's critical that sort of all those fintechs that are sort of working in that space pay more attention to this and sort of enable that. Aside of education, on sort of the education and financial services, we see also sort of related in the business sphere, there's wealth tech apps, which are allowing people to sort of invest their money and protect their wealth by investing in sort of foreign stock markets, whether it's the NASDAQ or the NYSE. Given the currency risk that we have in many, many countries across Africa, this is definitely not just a Nigerian thing. That's increasingly important for people. How do I protect my wealth? The small money I've earned, the small wealth I've created, how do I protect it? And that's absolutely critical, is that people are able to find investment opportunities, not just here, but across the world. So I think that's really critical. I think a big point I do want to touch on before I stop speaking here is government policy. And I love the work that they're doing at the LSETF. I think that's absolutely sort of intelligent sort of government thinking. It's created jobs, it's boosted entrepreneurs, and it's trained people who might not necessarily have the skills to participate in today's economy.
Kilometer. Right-of-way fees are the fees you pay when you lay broadband or you lay cable of any sort in a particular location, and states usually charge them. Now, it's been one of the big impediments to the wide rollout of broadband, which of course is a precondition to people participating in the digital economy. So Ekiti State announced that they were lowering that, and since then we've had sort of 2 or 3 different announcements of people looking to invest in Ekiti State to lay pretty extensive, kilometers of broadband. What that means is 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, you have Ekiti State being a massive sort of education and digital workforce. They already have a fantastic educational system, but if you've read, I think a couple of Techabal articles have talked about the fact that people leave Ekiti State after they get that fantastic technical education to come to Lagos where the opportunities are. By creating sort of deeper broadband penetration, by attracting employers who are looking for capable talent, in a place that has the infrastructure for them to actually get things done, you then make Ekiti State a place that can actually employ a larger pool of people. And I don't think that's a loss at all for Lagos. I think this is across the continents that have sort of highly educated, highly capable workforces that they can connect with. The better for us as a country, as a continent, in total. And I think a really great sort of, or the domino thing I said with the Ekiti State was, Ekiti State announced that they were dropping the price of the right-of-way fees, and then almost every other state in Nigeria sort of followed in fairly quick succession. I think about 19 states, so not every state, but about 19 states have announced that they're lowering or canceling right-of-way fees. And so all of that creates the opportunity for this broadband rollout to sort of improve. And that's in Nigeria, but across the continent, I think there are a lot of efforts like this to increase broadband penetration. Some of that's coming from international organizations. Google has a project, Facebook has a massive project, but it is important that policymakers across the continent are also thinking intelligently about these things and taking advantage of the moment to sort of accelerate the opportunities for them and for their citizens to participate in this economy. I think I'm going to stop there. Happy to answer more questions during the Q&A. But yeah, that's what we do.
Thank you so much, Tomiwa. Thank you. I'll be inviting Mr. Ayeni the Great. Oh, okay. Hello. Thank you, Tomiwa. Next up is Mr. Ayeni the Great. Please introduce yourself and give us your take on the topic today.
All right. Thank you, Toby. Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be here. I hope my audio is working well. As Toby has introduced me, thanks. My name is Ayeni. I work for a company called BHM. Interestingly, we have interest in communications and technology. And I'd like, when Timmy said she was doing this, I thought, okay, it's a good time to have this kind of conversation. Sadly, I've come here today with more questions than answers, and I will tell you why. So I've listened to the keynote from YBO and the keynote from Adrian, and while taking notes, I kept asking myself, we didn't start badly. So first, I want to set some premise. Technology is very broad. When we think tech and we think digital, people often think internet. And I like to think that there is a lot of tech happening outside of the internet. And Nigeria, for example, if you think of those advancements, first terrestrial TV in Africa was here. I think we need to find our way back. Now, technology will solve a lot of problems for us, whether it's in agriculture or in media or in financial services or in transportation or even in governance. That's on the one side. Communications, PR, storytelling will also help us either set agenda for government or for citizens, or as the US has very, very well, show the world what we're about and what we are doing. The question I have is, what should come first? The case study of the LSCTF, as Tosi and Tomowa have spoken about, or the case study from Ekiti as concerns right of way, that has shown you that when government understands what is important and they do the right things, they can transform an entire industry. That's what we've seen that happened in telecoms. My challenge is, do we need to use the PR infrastructure that exists to set an agenda for citizens and for government so that we can understand why it's important to consider technological transformation? Or do we need to continue the work that we're doing? Because I think that a lot of work is being done. My challenge is that they are either not being sustained or they are not being heard, or as somebody said earlier, they are not being well funded. So in this conference, we have people from technology, we have people from government, we have people from media, and we have people from comms. My question is, people talk about the American dream. What is the Nigerian dream? What is the African dream? If we cut all the broad data that we keep circulating, you say Nigeria has 200 million people, Africa 1 billion plus people. The US is 324 million people. So what problems are the most important for us to solve? How do we get to solving those problems? To lift people out of poverty and very, very importantly, how do we make sure that the rest of the world, because we grew up seeing the US as God's own country. It's a shame that the social media today, everybody can see real time what's happening across the world. The concept of the US as God's own country is being demystified by the day because we can see real time what is happening. But we grew up based on the use of media, based on storytelling. The US used the media, used Hollywood, used music to sell the concept of America as the greatest country on earth. And we saw the US from the point of view of how they wanted us to see it. So my concern is it's first, we need to transform how we live. 1 billion people. How can we use technology to lift us out of all the issues that we have? That's one. Two, how do we tell that story so that my 12-year-old child growing up today can identify with the concept of the African dream and understand the role that she has to play to participate in making that dream come to fruition. As we send our kids to school, primary school, secondary school, university, as kids begin to determine career paths to take, what are they buying into really? Who are we? Where are we going to? Why should I care? So I think in building tools, in transforming industries, I would say it's just the first step. The second step is now that we have GSM and all of that happened, what was the purpose? Should it be a means to an end? What is the end in itself? If we solve, there's a big problem in media, a space I'm very passionate about. We need to use technology to transform media in this country. In fact, I dare say that until we do that, it may be impossible to solve political in Nigeria because the media we have today is compromised in every way that you can imagine. So in thinking about embracing technology for media, what is the agenda? What is the vision? And how do we make everybody involved understand that it's not enough to create a content management system or to create computers that can understand Igbo, Yoruba, and Hausa languages? Why should I, if I have the skills to build a new software today or to create a new language, why should I even care? So these are questions, as I said, I've come here today pondering, saying, what do we need to solve? Where does that lie? Which one lies with government? Which one lies with the private sector? But more importantly, I come across so many brilliant people every day that their dream, it's around 5 things. One, most of them, their dream is to get out of the continent and go to Europe and go to America. Some of them just want to get rich. And some want to get rich legitimately. They don't want to do crime. Some want to get rich no matter what. We have a platform called Newsroom. One of the reporters did a very, very fantastic feature a few days ago. Went to the area that Hush Puppy grew up. Hush Puppy is a young man who was arrested in Dubai and was taken to the US. He's been prosecuted. This young boy that works for Newsroom went to Wolonchoki, did fantastic investigative piece on Hush Puppy, where he grew up, spoke with his neighbors and all of that. That piece was published a few days ago. Most of the comments, you will say the likes of Tomiwa and Temi and Co. say, oh, great job, good work. But most of the citizen comments are, who sent you message? Leave him alone. What's wrong with you? I will unfollow you. And we see that every day. We've reached a place where we've even lost the concept of what is right and what is wrong. So just to round up, I think we have a great opportunity to use technology to fix our continent, whether we're tapping into them or not. But I think that should just be the beginning. We need to educate ourselves, educate the young people on who we are, what the vision should be, so that should there be the problems that need to be solved, the problems that are aligned with the vision for the continent. So this is what I look forward to discussing on this session today. And I hope I'll be able to get feedback and some insight from not just the panelists, but from some of the attendees also. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was really insightful. I think I agree with what you're saying. Yes, that should be the beginning, but we actually need to change the perception of the average Nigerian. I totally agree. Like you rightly said, to all our participants, you can actually drop your questions, drop your opinion, your feedback, just drop it. we'll get back to it when it's time. And yeah, we'll be moving on to our next panelist, Mr. Segun. Kindly give us a brief introduction and tell us your take on the topic today. Okay, while we wait for Mr. Segun to come through, we'll be inviting our next panelist, Mr. Ayeni Adekunle. Kindly give a brief introduction. And
so can you hear me? I just need to be sure that I'm audible. I am? Okay. Fantastic. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Toby, I don't envy your job because I know that the topic we're talking about is really very broad, and then we're looking to you to be able to tie up all the loose ends and then focus on in the final direction that we will go eventually when we're trying to bring the entire conversation together. Because trust me, I think 1 hour, 2 hours is really difficult to do justice to the issue of embracing technology. And it's even more difficult to have to contribute in 5 minutes as well. But let me try and see how I can do that. Now, my name is Emmanuel Asika. I lead HP's channel in Central Africa, and of course, Central Africa is not the country. Central Africa, it's a combination of about 5 countries, which include Nigeria, Ghana, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and as well as Libya. And of course, the channel also includes retail, the attended channel, proximity channel. So it's a combination of a lot of things. For me, I'd like to start with the pandemic, but I'm not going to dwell so much on that. Pandemic, because of course it touches me specifically in so many ways. But the pandemic has accelerated, and I think we've heard this word a lot, accelerated the conversations about technology and technology transformation for us in IT, or for us as the OEM, because I represent HP. It's a conversation that we have always had. It's something that we had always seen coming. Just to give you an example, we had always known that the future was service-led, and so we had begun the transition from moving from transactional business to what we call contractual business, but it's everything as a service. So as opposed to just getting a laptop or a printer or a desktop, you pay a premium and you get a service. So a service where the health of your device is monitored, and then it's managed. When there are issues, it's fixed because you've paid the premium. And then if it needs to be changed, it's changed not at your cost, but just because you are into that contract. And we've seen this evolving, especially because this is the future, but it's the future that has been accelerated now. So for me, I want to dwell a bit on business, of course, and then talk just a bit about the infrastructure capability. And I think a lot of people have talked about that as well. I just want to further the conversation. We do have an infrastructure deficit in Africa as a whole, and not just in Nigeria. And I think Ayeni has alluded to that. It's an infrastructure deficit that will not go away even after COVID-19. So after COVID-19 is done and dusted, we will still be faced with the reality that Africa has a serious infrastructure deficit. Now, this deficit are some of the basic things that also have been mentioned. For example, how do we get electricity to power the devices? That's enabling our transformation. How do we get the fast and reliable and affordable internet, for example, to enable the devices that we have? How do we deal with health? How do we deal with literacy? How do we even deal with something as basic as security and roads? Now, these are infrastructure problems that, to a large extent, are very political. So I think that it's important that we have someone from LSETF here, because a lot of these solutions post-COVID are still political solutions, but not to give excuses or to run away from responsibility. There are certain things that we are doing to deal creatively. And I think that's one of the things that innovation does, is that where there are challenges, innovation rises to the occasion. For example, where you have electricity as a challenge, we have come up with devices that are fast charge and that can give you a 24-hour, close to 24-hour battery life. So this is a response to try to see how we deal with the power issue. For instances, because of the new definition of the workplace, where we're no longer restricted to just a room or just a location, we're increasingly going to become mobile, even post-COVID. Ruggedity of the devices that you use becomes important. So we have created devices that are military tested, so they can withstand weather, they can withstand most of the wear and tear of motion and mobility as well. And then, of course, one of the major problems, the major challenges that are associated with remote working, remote learning, or anything that you're talking about remote is security. So there's a cyber threat. Of course, we must have heard of what happened with Twitter just a few days ago. We estimate that there are 1 billion cyber attacks every single month. And so it's important that most of the devices that you use, because I'm talking about the infrastructure capability, are secure. And then one of the things we've done is that we have bundled security with the devices that we have, so that it complements what you have in terms of an antivirus. Okay, so we create the BIOS. So from the moment that you're clicking on your device to the moment where you are searching an email, which is where the vulnerability and the entry points for attacks come in, you see that you have some form of protection and security. So this is us looking globally and saying that these are some of the challenges that maybe we do not have the capability or the bandwidth to fix, but we are innovatively tackling these issues. Because for us to be able to embrace technology, to be able to become digitally fit, which also is a new word that is becoming a bit popular, you need to have digital infrastructure, whether it's hardware or whether you're talking about broadband or internet and the like. Another one, of course, that is also very dear to our heart is literacy. And I think LSTF is also moving in that direction. So it's important that as we grow as a continent, as we grow as a nation, that the people who will engage with technology are literate. And I'm not just talking about formal education, I'm talking about digital literacy. One of the things that we are doing is that we have the HP Life, where we're giving free, very similar to what, and that resonates with me, what ETF is doing, free online digital and business classes where we have trained, we have a goal of reaching 100 million people by 2025 in Africa. By 2021, we should have reached about 100,000 people in this program, where we are trying to prepare people for the future. At the end of the day, we can speak almost romantically about how the transformation has happened and the things that we're expecting. But if we do not have the basic tools, I think it's pretty much a pipe dream. Of course, there's another thing, an important thing that was mentioned was funding. We do know that a large percentage of the population live in some high and extreme poverty. Some other things we're trying to do is also to ensure that the entry-level devices, so whether notebooks, Chromebooks, are becoming increasingly affordable as people begin to prepare or begin to partake or engage in the digital era and the digital transformation. So I think for me, what I'll add is that it's important that we are equipping people, and I think there's so many ways to do that. We can do that as a company, we can do that individually, but very importantly, we do need the support of the government, of policymakers. There's very little that can be done in a large scale. What we have succeeded in achieving in Africa, and the stats are pretty good, is despite, in so many cases, the support from policymakers and from government, but we still are moving nonetheless. So, I mean, the potential is there, it's huge. Africa still has 21 out of 30 fastest growing nations. Tech hubs are increasing in exponential numbers. We have over 700 of them in Africa, with about 100 in Nigeria already, and I think we've mentioned some of them. We have, of course, internet penetration that is increasing about 40% in Africa today. We have more mobile phones in Africa than we have toilets and clean portable drinking water. So these are opportunities, and I think for us, one of the greatest opportunities is, and it's sad to know that we have less than 10% of PC penetration in Africa. So it's an opportunity to grow. The reason why Africa is going to be the darling and the bride of foreign direct investments. Not to talk about the tech capabilities, when you have people like the founders of Facebook, like the founders of Twitter, coming in droves, into Africa because of the limitless potential that we have here. So just to round off again, like I said, it's just 5 minutes. The potential is there, it's huge. We as an organization are in the forefront of providing digital capabilities and serve as a foundation for this explosion that will happen and has been accelerated because of the pandemic. But we also would seek huge support, obviously, from the government, because where you see people in Kenya succeed in South Africa, it's largely because of a tech-friendly government and tech-friendly policies. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Emmanuel. Once again, if you have any question, please kindly leave it in the Q&A session and we'll get to it. Now let's get to our questions, because I'm really excited. I'm going to start off with Amy. You said something really important and I latched onto it. You said that the one who is to rule has to embrace future technology, yeah? And I feel that is quite valid. But what would you say are some of the important future technology that businesses in Africa need to embrace that they've not embraced yet? I don't know if you get my question.
Okay, I think I'll try and address this in the way that I understand it. So you're saying that what are the key technology transformation that you believe businesses in Africa should be adopting, but they're yet to? I think that organizations are different, but one concept is true for technology, which is digital business transformation. Depending on what service or what sector you play in, either the service sector or consumer sector, from AI to robotics to chatbots, we've seen recent increase in that. While I'm not going to dwell on that as not being the core tech individual, but a service provider within the technology sector, I do believe that organizations have recorded increase, or I would say recorded advantages adopting some of this technology transformation. I do believe that if you do make digital business transformation a priority within the organization, and perhaps put it into phases, and then look at the immediate changes that you can work with. Take, for instance, during the pandemic and the lockdown, quite a number of banks eventually had to resort to maybe like chatbots and AI, and as well as WhatsApp to try and reach out to individuals. South African government had like a WhatsApp response team for the pandemic. So most of the questions and inquiry from the populace regarding the pandemic and all of that was being addressed through WhatsApp. We've also seen an increase in that from the banks. These days, because of the timing and then the curfew in town, you find that, okay, banks are trying to reach out to consumers based on the apps or the places that, they are mostly found at. I think that organizations need to look inward to try and understand what their own intricacies are, and then begin to look bit by bit into the technology solutions that will help them to, achieve their goals and also drive them towards a better future.
Thank you so much, Tammy, for that good answer. We have so many questions, but before I get into it, I'd like to ask Mr. Ayeni the Great, So I get what you're saying about changing the perception of the average Nigerian, but in your own opinion or in your own take, what are like, do you think PR is doing enough at the moment to pass that message across? Do you think that the PR industries in Nigeria are doing enough already, especially when it comes to broadcasting what has already been done by people who have embraced technology in the past times?
Okay, thanks, Toby. I will, with your permission, I will broaden that to say the comm space. So I will bring the media guys in, I'll bring the advertising guys in, I will bring the public relations guys in and all of that. That entire comm space, there's a lot of opportunity for national or continental orientation. The kids, I saw some data a few weeks ago about those that were born in the 90s. Africa's youth population is growing at very unbelievable rates. We're a very young continent. If you come into Nigeria, where I live, I mean, we're very young country. The VP was speaking at an FT event a year or so ago when he gave this data. I like to quote the data because the vice president himself provided data. He said 74.1% of our young people are under the age of 25 years old. That's where we are. So if we're going to be known as a criminal nation, they will be responsible for it. If we are going to be known as an innovation nation, they are going to be known for it. Okay, so as we plot the future, okay, what are we teaching in our schools? 2, what are we exposing in our media? If you so I had this interesting call with Noah, who's also a panelist here today, like a month ago. And we can be arrogant all we like and be intellectual all we like, but to look at data based on consumer engagement. You won't find the Punch and Vanguard and Guardian and this there. You won't find the Coco there. So if you were to look at where the critical mass of these young people go to. So for me, what are we feeding them from the media perspective? From the music perspective, what are we feeding them? From the movie perspective, what are we feeding them? You see, the mind is extremely important. So I would say communications from media to film to music to comedy. What is the agenda? What are we trying to fill the kid that is born today with? And as I said when I opened my statement, I think that Nigeria started well with education, with healthcare. We all have the facts. With media, okay, we saw the concept. The way the generation that is living or that's just left, the way they believed in Nigeria, the way they worked hard to build a certain kind of Nigeria. Even if you were to look at the vision of the leaders from Zik to Awu and all of them, I think we have reached a place where it's just free for all. There is no clear objective. There is no clear national or continental agenda. I don't see how we can all work together towards a purpose if we don't even know what we are working towards. So it's good to be a user of digital technology, but it's perhaps better to be the one providing an opportunity for communities and people and countries and all of that. You know, some of the products that we use here are made by small countries in Europe. So my point is, journalists, bloggers, public relations professionals, copywriters, advertisers, teachers, leaders have a core role to play in making sure that we inspire a new generation to think in the way that we think would transform the continent that we have. The promise that Africa holds is useful in 2 ways. I like to say it. It's useful to us as a continent. 1 billion people. Think of the opportunity. But I think it's useful to the rest of the world also. So we do ourselves great disservice if we don't understand what the job to be done is, to use that. But we do the rest of the world a great disservice also if we don't come to the party. So just to round up, we all, I mean, I don't consider myself part of that generation that is coming. I'm probably on my way out. We owe the people who are in their teens now. Samoa is laughing. We owe the people in their teens now, entering their 20s now, an obligation to set the agenda for what the Africa dream should be. And then if we are now able to build resources and technology and platforms and tools and states and companies that can then help us achieve that, nobody can stop the continent if we do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. But I think I'll still be on you and Tammy, because this is the question I have next is focused on PR. And I'd like to flip the switch a bit and say that, would you think that the tech industry
I don't know if anybody else can get to be, but I seem to have lost you for a few seconds there.
Frozen. Let's give her a moment to come back.
That's part of the problems we have to solve.
Definitely. Baby boy, there's a lot of work left to be done. Yet.
I'm tired. I'm on my way out. You know.
I'm going to.
Are you back, Toby?
Actually, I'd asked him.
Yeah.
I can jump in on that last question, actually. So I'm just going to speak a little bit about that. I agree with you. Look, there's a lot of work to do from a PR perspective, both internally and globally. So there's a perspective issue for Africans that needs to be fixed, but internally we also sort of need to reorient the way we sort of think about ourselves. I like the question you asked about what's the Nigerian dream. I don't have the answer to that question, but it's obviously a critical question that we have to answer, because the fact that we don't have an answer to it shows in the way we think about ourselves, in the way we think about public officials. It shows in what people reach for. I mean, for some people, Hush Puppy is the dream. And basically, I mean, he's essentially being more effective in setting the agenda than some of the rest of us are. That being said, like I said, Tech About covers the technology industry. And we know that there's definitely another narrative where people are sort of, look, I can stand in Suleri and I can be earning dollars from a German company. And so there are people who've trained themselves. I mean, I got a CV from a young man who studied zoology, but is teaching himself to cook. And he knows that the opportunities are for him to sort of get world class. And whether working in Nigeria for Nigerian companies or working in Nigeria for global companies, or Japa, which is also part of, which like leaving the country, part of the Nigerian dream. But whatever it is, he knows that there's an opportunity for him to educate himself online and through sort of like the support of his peers and become world-class. And he has enough examples of world-class designers, coders, developers, whatever it is, who have all sort of started from the same conditions that he did and have become sort of excellent. And so we know that there's definitely there are different narratives sort of in play. And that's just it's not just in Nigeria, it's across the continent. From a PR perspective, in terms of projecting ourselves globally, I think there's definitely a lot of work for the media to do and for media organizations to do. For us, both with Tech About and with Zukoko, a lot of it is changing the narrative. It's telling new stories. With Tech About, we project ourselves outside to the world very aggressively. And so whether it's our newsletters, upcoming podcasts, whether it's the conferences that we do, I know that our readership is global, and it's a readership that is looking at the continent. And I mean, like I get emails from people, it's like, I'm in Austria, I'm in Silicon Valley, I'm in China, and I'm following what it is that happens on the continent by seeing what the narratives you are putting out are, by seeing what it is that you say is hot, where people are doing things. And so, I mean, and I would do a little bit of PR here. If you're not following us on all of those platforms, if you're not subscribed to our newsletter, you should be, because there's a lot that is happening. And I mean, there's a lot that's happening. We have a newsletter that comes out on Sundays that's even looking at the next wave of technology. How is it going? So this transformation that we're undergoing, how does it impact the continent? How does it impact people? So I think there's a fair bit that is going on. It's hampered by poor government regulation. It's hampered by poor infrastructure. It's hampered by mindsets that are not ready. But the work that we must do is we must push as aggressively as possible. We must push to the forefront of it. Just one last thing that you said, Ayeni, about, look, the youth are not necessarily they're not necessarily reading Punch, they're not necessarily reading Guardian. At the moment, they might not even, the vast majority of them are probably reading Linda rather than Zukoko. But I mean, again, that's the work, is we're getting to this place where you must set an agenda. And you and I have talked about the fact that, when we started out with Zukoko, there was a question about, like, can you do that much original content creation rather than content aggregation, which is what Linda does, which is what quite a number
Star
of
Blog and
publications.
Co. Yeah, all of them. Yeah.
Rather than content creation, and we're doing sort of like very aggressive content creation. And the idea is, let us set the conversation, let us set the agenda, let us not just follow what has been laid out, but let us dictate where the conversation is going. I think one last thing on that dictating where the conversation is going is I'm encouraged by the global visibility of our content creators. Google pays attention to them. Netflix is paying attention to them. Like the world is getting an opportunity to see more and more of what it is that we do. I think that's fantastic. I think the sort of payouts that people can get from your Netflix, the fact that people are getting rich on Google or YouTube,
yeah,
fantastic for us as a people. And it means that you just need a better quality of content. You need more opportunity. You need people pushing harder to push new narratives into that space. One of our goals is, before the end of this year, can we get some content onto Netflix that's not just the standard, we're doing great in cinema and Nollywood and New Nollywood or whatever it is, but what other content is vital for the world to see about what it is that Nigeria or West Africa or Africa is today? So if anybody followed our Jollof Road trip, we're trying to get that into a bigger audience to understand, well, what's contemporary West Africa like today? What are the other images and stories that we can push out? And so that's our work, and I think it's the work of everybody that's here.
Thanks, Tamara. Back to you, Temi. Since we don't have Toby, Temi.
Oh, sorry, there was a slight network issue which we're currently fixing. But thank you so much, Tomiwa, and thank you, Mr. Ayeni. Great. But I think I would like to move the conversation to other aspects that is not really directly related to PR. And I think like this question is, I'm throwing it to everyone, but I'd like to ask Ms. Fumi or Mrs. Fumi, I'm not sure, I'm sorry if I don't get that well or right. Ms. Fumi, this question is for you. And when it comes to startups, based on what I've seen in the past, especially in my space, I've realized that there has been like a rise of startups in recent times. Like new startups have come up, even despite the pandemic that we're currently going through. In your own opinion, what is that one factor that startups need to start adopting to properly leverage on technology?
Thank you very much, Toby. And this has been a very, very great and engaging conversation. I think, just permit me, I think there's something I would like Ayeni and Tamara to probably answer at some point, like who is supposed to create that Nigerian dream? I mean, that's a conversation I would like to have, so that we can actually kind of like move that forward. But very, very engaging. And for the first time, I just had this epiphany, like, oh yeah, we should really have a Nigerian dream. But the question is, who is supposed to create that dream, right? Very interesting. Yes, you're very correct, Toby. Yeah, a lot is going on right now in Nigeria in the startup space. Like startups are springing up like virtually every day. I do a lot of work with students. I run a foundation, where I go to a lot of universities, and what is happening in Nigerian universities today is just amazing, right? You go into those schools and you see the kind of products that are being churned out, that actually help us to address critical problems in different sectors, across the economy in Nigeria. But then the major issue I find for most of them is distribution, which is where I believe that the media can really, really help, right? So most of them create this really, really great product. Obviously, there's the side of it where you kind of like need to be refined, right? The way you think about the product, the final output and all of that stuff for you to be globally competitive. But then I see that a lot of them really struggle with distribution. So I've created this really great thing. It's probably going to solve this big problem. It's going to open up this new side of the economy, and all of that. But then there is no way for me to get the word out. Right? And then what you then find is that somebody else then goes and builds something very similar because you're trying to solve the same problem, but then nobody knows that that problem has already been solved by somebody else. So you find out today that a lot of products are out there, a lot of solutions are out there, but the word is not out there, right? People don't really know that those products exist. I know that I saw this application recently. It sounded like a product for Africa. I've forgotten what it's called now. But again, what they are also trying to do is to create these distribution channels for startups, right? For all of these great products that are coming out of especially the Nigerian universities. A lot is going on in there. So I think the media can also help to support and create this distribution channels, for most of these products, because I think it will really help them. I believe the second part of the question you were trying to ask also now focuses on the startups themselves, right? The founders, and what I feel that they really need to pay attention to. One thing I'm finding is many of them don't build products that are globally competitive and that can actually also scale, right? And so how do they begin? And I believe it's a mindset thing, right? And our thinking, our ability to be able to think about things in a certain way. There's this concept I talk about all the time. It's called the critical path thinking. I love it so much, because it's just about how I approach trying to solve my problem, right? And then I actually look at the end, what I'm trying to achieve at the end, and I put that into consideration from the beginning. And I see that lacking in a lot of things. So sometimes you see these people, they have really, really great product, but you just see that it's not well thought through. I'm not talking about, okay, there's a market gap, but is that gap actually big enough for me to create an entire product around? There's some reasons in the industry or in tech generally where there are market gaps. It's not because that gap is supposed to be solved, just because it's just too small for anybody to go into. So how are you thinking about building out your product? How are you thinking about the entire market size? Are you thinking about it going on with scale? The third thing for me, again, is also the talent bit, right? And I think I mentioned that when we started. I still struggle with finding the quality, right? The quality of people that we need to run globally competitive companies, tech companies, especially in Nigeria and across Africa. Through my career, I actually took a detour and I did HR for about 2.5 years. And through that period, I had the opportunity to probably interview well over, 500 people, candidates, most of them young people, obviously. And you just find out that there's just something wrong with the quality of graduates that we're churning out, right? And how are we already teaching them about technology? Many of them don't even know about the careers that are available in technology today. I think it was what Tomiwa was talking about, you read zoology in school. I don't know the career you want to build in zoology in Nigeria. So most of them don't even know that there are opportunities in the digital economy today that can absorb them if they begin to learn those things while they are back, while they're actually still in school. So to put it all together, there are lots of opportunities. And I believe that for Nigeria for us to take our position globally, we need to build companies. We need to build startups. We need the startups to thrive and to be successful and to be globally competitive. For them to do that, they need strong distribution channels. People need to be able to get the word out there for them. People need to know that these products actually really do exist. The founders themselves need to understand what it means to build a globally competitive product, right? Through their thinking, their exposure to talents globally, to see how the thinking is just different when a product is built by somebody that really understands the problem they're trying to solve versus somebody that is just in love with the idea of building a startup, right? And then the third bit is that even because you're going to need people to work within that company, right? The talent pool coming out of our universities today, the young people, the graduates, the NYSC scheme, at a point I remember having a conversation maybe we should actually turn NYSC some sort of, technology, or why people are mandated to actually take some digital courses, expose them to the digital economy, get them ready, because that's just a lot going on there. I know that at a point, the government made a decision, everybody, is either you're teaching or you go into agriculture. Can we actually make that kind of way, actually make sure that most people during the NYSC years are exposed to the digital economy? What is really going to move, this continent forward? Thank you. So these are my thoughts on that.
Thank you so much, Femi. Thank you. I'd like to go to the questions that people have asked already. And I think the first one is for Tosin. Someone's asking if financing has always been a critical problem for startup development. Do you think that financing is a critical problem or has always been a critical problem for startup development?
Thank you, Toby. I don't think it's just financing. I think, yes, access to financing has been one of the challenges in Nigeria, especially because if you look at our interest rate, for example, if you're trying to access money from the banks, you're looking at over 20-something%. But I think what's really critical is the fact that I personally think that we don't have enough incubator programs in the country. I think we have too many accelerator programs. And that's why sometimes when you hear about successful startups, this startup has raised X amount, this startup is doing well. If you do some digging, you would find that, okay, the startup, went to like Y Combinator, the startup attended Google Accelerator, etc. But if you think about the early stage startup that the speaker before me had just talked about, who is really helping them? I think what startups really need is access. And I think they can get that access through like networks or mentorship. Because if you think about a young person who has a business, for example, or has a solution, if that person has access to the right people that can connect that startup to the right private companies, for example, that can possibly help with testing. If somebody can connect that startup to media houses like Tech Cabal, for example, that can interview them and do a story on them. If you can connect them to investors like Microtraction, for example, that invest in early stage businesses. But if they don't have that access, they don't have any access to government. I mean, who is going to take them to ministries to have them sit down with the ministry and talk about their solution, to even see if it's even in line with the government's plan? So I think what they really need is access. Without that access, without the connection, without the network, yes, they're just in their schools or wherever they are, they have this amazing solution. They're not part of any co-working space. For example, if you look at CC Hub, they've done a lot for startups in terms of connecting them to investing in them directly, and also connecting them to other investors, connecting them to governments, etc. So if nobody is doing that for the startups, then, I don't think it's a funding problem yet, because we're not even sure who's going to buy this amazing product to begin with. And nobody is going to give you money if you cannot show that you can make a profit. I mean, I'm not just going to give you money because I like your face. I'm going to give you money because I'm sure that at some point you're going to give me back a return on my investment. So if you cannot even show me that you're making profit and you want to grow, then I'll start to ask you, what exactly are you growing if nobody's buying it? So I think what they really need is access and networking. And I want to quickly just touch on infrastructure, because unfortunately I have to log off at 2:00 because I have another session. But I hear a lot of people talk about, education and training, etc. And I think because I'm in the space, I kind of have an idea how difficult it is. And yes, we should be training for the future, and we should include the right courses in our curriculum. But I think what's really critical is infrastructure. The infrastructure that we have in Nigeria is not good enough in terms of poor electricity and expensive internet. A lot of companies, HP is here, HP, Oracle, IBM, Microsoft, Coursera, they have free trainings online. Coursera just announced that their platform is free for students all over the world for the next few months due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But if you look at the numbers, how many Nigerians are actually taking advantage of all these free platforms? Not that many, because let's face it, internet is expensive. Even if you're getting, I think Swift is like 24,000 naira unlimited for 1 month. That's expensive for the average Nigerian. So if there's no electricity, there's no cheap internet, and then all these courses are available, how do you want them to access it? So until we can think about solving our infrastructure problem, and, I like what Tomiwa said about what the state government is doing in terms of reducing the cost of laying fiber, and now more companies are able to lay fiber. Until we can get more people connected, I don't really, I struggle, and I don't want to be too brash, but I'm like, what are we talking about? How are we going to help them? And even when we look at the market in Nigeria, and we always talk about, the 200 million people, we have this massive market, blah, blah, blah. The truth is, a lot of our businesses are micro businesses. And I don't know if you've ever dealt with people at the grassroots level. It is another ball game. Like, it is not, Nigeria has like over 40 something million small businesses. A lot of them are micro businesses. So when you're developing solutions for SMEs, hello, the SME that you're thinking about is not the entire 43 million, because the other ones, some people say we're hampered by poverty. Sorry. So so the businesses that you're thinking about, a lot of them are not connected, don't understand what you're asking them to do. So what markets are we talking about? So I'm really passionate about, whatever solution is going to help me digitize micro businesses, because that is where our numbers are. That is where our market is. So until you can solve that problem, get them connected, figure out how you're going to teach them whatever it is you want to teach them, then this market that we're talking about does not exist. And until you fix the infrastructure problems, not by training teachers via WhatsApp or however the hell you want to train them, sorry, excuse my language, not by training teachers via like using, I don't know. But anyway, not expecting the teachers to train students who possibly don't even have computers to begin with, and don't have light at home, and don't have internet at home, and you want them to continue practicing, because this thing is not theory, it's practical. So how does it work? So what are we really talking about? That's just my 2 cents. Back to you, Toby.
Okay, hi, Toby. Okay, so I'd just like to, quickly contribute to that.
All right.
So I think that's one of the reasons, or one of the things that we're discussing here today, really. I'm glad that we're asking these questions, because we're asking the right questions. If we do say infrastructure, we have poor infrastructure, we have poor government policies, I think we've come to the table where we need to decide to take actions. We're well familiar, with all the challenges within the space, all of the limitations within the space, but we're saying that for us to get to the desired future that we're looking at, then we need to begin to design solutions around that. For the communications sector, should we be looking at lobbying campaigns and stuff like that we can start to begin to get the government to prioritize infrastructure for technology development? I also think in addressing one of the things that Fumi mentioned, talking about distribution channel, saying that sometimes I understand that, yes, and I think that maybe we should ask ourselves here, because we have tech players in the house today. I also think that, from our interaction with the tech space, we find that they prioritize maybe their business, especially at the startup phase, they prioritize the business idea or the solution more than the marketing or the public relations aspect. I think one of the things that we need to drop here today at this conference is you need to take exposure, storytelling for your product or for your service as important as your business plan itself. I think even at the point where you are designing the solution for this set of people, you need to bring in the communications people into the room. You need to begin to paint a picture of where you're looking at. And these are the guys that will eventually help you take, script the next chapter, as I would like to call it, and then take the story out there. Yes, there are quite a number of startups here and there with solutions. Sometimes we even have similarities. I feel that there are a lot of duplications within the sector. We should be seeing more of collaboration and all of that. But I think that the tech space and tech players they need to begin to prioritize media, communication, storytelling before the product is introduced, when it is introduced, and eventually when, it's at the growth stage where you're then looking for finance, and all of that. But I'm also thinking here today that we should not just ask the questions. I think that we should paint a way forward. From this conference today, if we identify that it's infrastructure that is the challenge, or we identify, like Ayeni said, that it's actually having a Nigerian dream or a vision for us, then how do we begin? Because I think that we're asking the right questions. But going forward, the future, when we say what's next, what are the steps that we need to begin, to take? And I think that I would like panelists to, contribute to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. And just to buttress what you just said, someone even asked the question. Yes, we've talked about the problems, and I think Olamide said something which is very valid. She or he said, how can we ensure access to technology for every Nigerian, regardless of education, location, or age? Because if we continue to pay attention to problems, like rightly said, we'll not solution. So what is, how in our own bit in our own capacity, how do you think we can, ensure that people who don't stay in Lagos, because Lagos seems to be the hub for everything, right? How do we ensure that people who don't stay in developed places also can also embrace technology? So I don't know, Emmanuel, I don't know if you have any take on this based on your experience.
Oh yes, yes, and indeed, what you've just mentioned is well my own definition of what the Nigerian dream should be. So, of course, Ayeni mentioned about the American dream. What I would have asked would be is, were there a set of people who sat in a room and said, okay, we want to define a dream for America. Maybe yes, maybe no. Of course. But the point is that what is the universal dream? What's the global dream for nations? America sold the fact that it was a great nation. It was a great nation that had equal opportunities. It was a great nation where every life was honored. It was a great nation where dreams could become possibilities. And then that narrative they tried as well in their policies, in their politics to try to achieve. So in Nigeria, similarly, I mean, I know that infrastructure is the major issue, and that's one of the reasons why I started off that way in the first place. We have a lot of people who are poor. We have a lot of people who are out of the social safety net. And she was absolutely right that when we talk about digitization, when we talk about all the laudable dreams that we have, it's really just for like 10, maybe less than 10% of the population. So the dream would be, how do we include all the other guys into the social safety net? I mean, the easiest and maybe simplistic answer to this question would be, let's get a government in place that absolutely prioritizes these things and then begin to craft a digital strategy, begins to craft policies that will include everybody into the social safety net. One of the things that I know, and this is a personal take, is the fact that a lot of young people are not interested in the way that they are governed. And so the people who are actually, so there's little representation at the place where the policies are being made that affect us, whether we like it or not. I mean, a lot of people are political. I mean, I don't care whatever is going on there. Let me just make my money, focus on my life, without knowing that every decision in terms of policy, in terms of whether we succeed as a nation or not, is a decision that starts with us. All right, now that's the first way I think that we can immediately, of course, I know this is more difficult than it sounds, to make a national policy is to get leaders who actually care about these conversations that we had. The other way, which is the longer, arduous route, would be to allow it to evolve. It means that people like you and us will have these conversations, and then we will begin to tell the story, the narrative about people like us who are doing fantastic things, people like Tech Cabal, people like CC Hub, people like the Andela guys, who are positively, without stealing, without cutting corners, who are making positive impacts, who are making a name for themselves, and who are changing the narrative. And then we will, with the media, with the help of everyone, we will begin to change the narrative and make people understand and see that, look, there is an alternative to what we have now, all right? And just like you mentioned, Timmy, we are beginning to do that as well, even in the tech space. We are beginning to engage with professionals, people like you, who will begin to tell that story, will begin to talk about things that are relevant with our local content to be able to drive the messaging and drive the awareness. And I think that as we also begin to educate the population, as we begin to invest, of course, as CSR for most of the big companies, we will contribute our own bit in changing the narrative because it's influence. We talked about how Hush Puppy forces narrative on people because of his influence. We also have a responsibility as well to influence the narrative and provide an alternative to what is popular culture today.
Okay.
I'd
like
Okay. So I just wanted to add something to that very brilliant conversation. So my take on the infrastructure bit is it's really tough. it's a really tough position because I feel Nigeria is a very poor country. And I believe that the only way for us to even get out of poverty is to create businesses. So in the end, you find like this chicken and egg thing going on, right? There was a trip I took recently, and I just started thinking that, is Nigeria actually rich enough for me to, actually go into my village where my grandmother is, and I see a properly tarred 2-lane road? Like, can Nigeria afford that as a country? Right, and I'm saying like the inroads. I'm not even talking about the express and all of that. Let's even kill that dream. I say, let me even go into the can Nigeria really afford that as a country? Corruption aside, I feel like Nigeria is very, very poor, and then in addition to that, we bake on corruption. So to drive the infrastructure agenda, I think it's really, really tough, and that's why I feel like the private sector has a lot of work to do to create wealth in this country. We need to create wealth to be able to significantly solve for these infrastructure problems. And obviously, there's a lot of work, for instance, that Venture Guardian Group does on this corruption side, right? So I was talking about all the things we do in revenue assurance, how you can use technology to actually reduce corruption, right? So that all of these agencies that generate money, the IRS, and everything, you can actually bring in a lot of more transparency into how all the funds that are generated from the private sector are then used, right, to build the infrastructure. So my own, my thoughts on all of this all the time is, how do we create wealth? We need to create wealth in Africa. And obviously we need the government to create policies that allows for businesses to thrive so that they can actually build businesses, right? But at the same time, the private sector needs to rise up. We need to sustain our startups. They cannot be dying. We need to sustain the MSMEs. We need to sustain the SMEs as well. Like we need to help them grow. We need to get them to be globally competitive so that we can create wealth in this country. And when we create wealth, the wealth will support the infrastructure building for the nation. That's my own take on that.
All right, thank you so much, Tammy, and for me. Thank you to all those who have contributed to. And I'd have to ask one last question from our questions so far this session, and that's from Jumoke. Jumoke is asking, I think that's also a valid question. She's saying, how would you as experts chart ways for governments and businesses in Nigeria to solve data problems? I think, Tomiwa, I think you can take this because we know that data is also a big issue in the country. So how would you think, or in what way do you think experts can chart ways for businesses in Africa to solve data problems?
So I think it's an interesting question. The thing with the government is that it's not a monolith. So it's not one government. There are various arms of government, some more effective than others, some more up to date than others. I mean, when we talk about regulators that seem to understand data and the importance of it, the CBN is a bit ahead of the rest of the curve. So I think it might have been Timmy or Fumi that mentioned sort of our problem with identification still hasn't been solved. There's a National Identity Management Commission that spent, over a decade and billions of naira now accomplishing very, very little in that space. On the other hand, the CBN and the Bankers Committee decided that they were going to do BVN and got it done in a two-year period. And that serves as sort of a really important basis for identifying people and for data about individuals. I think the CBN needs to be more aggressive and the Bankers Committee needs to be more aggressive in sort of creating a unified credit registry for all Nigerians. And on the back of the BVN, that is now possible. So I think what's critical is finding the agencies and finding the parts in government where there's some expertise, there's some understanding of what the issues are and of how to use things effectively, and building solutions in those spaces. So CBN's done a fantastic first step in creating BVN, getting it to, I think, 25 million records. That's a really small sort of number of people relative to the population of Nigeria. That being said, I think it's probably about 30 million people now. That being said, it's 30 million people that can be properly identified, that can be tracked across different banks. It's becoming the foundation for this new sort of debt policy that the CBN has where, if you're owing Access Bank and you have billions sitting in Fidelity Bank, then, they might be able to sort of seize it. So people are not running away from their debts, which is a notorious problem with Nigerians sort of building credit for themselves, is the fact that people are just unwilling to pay their debts, and banks have no real sort of way of enforcing it. So I think the key thing in terms of charting a path is finding the organizations where, and the government agencies where, look, there's sincerity, there's capacity, there's an understanding of what the opportunities are, and sort of building on those. And for those of us in the private sector who understand what the stakes are, finding those partners in government and working as effectively as possible with them. In terms of private organizations, I think there's a lot of understanding of data and the possible uses of it that still needs to happen. There's a lot of prioritizing data that still needs to happen. But really, I think it's about spreading the knowledge, it's about spreading the use cases, and it's about sort of the smartest people leading and setting an example for everybody else to follow. And then those of us who write about it and cover it, those of us who do PR about it, making sure that we make enough noise that people understand, well, you know, this is what these people have been able to do by prioritizing data. These are the benefits of it, basically.
All right, thank you so much, Tomiwa. Thank you to everyone who have contributed so far. It's been an amazing session. Unfortunately, we have to round up the session, but we'll be taking a 10 minutes break very soon. And while we do that, right, there's an official app that you all need to download to network with key players, right? And I'm not supposed to say this, but there are points you have to win. You can get points to win stuff. Yes, we have goodies actually. Anyways, please don't leave. There'll be an interlude session right now. Music will be playing. Interact on the app. Drop your comments. Network with other people, and we'll see you soon for the pitch session. And that will be very, very interesting. So yeah, catch you on the other side. Bye.
Bye, everybody.